This happened a week ago. I'm Jake, 35 years old. I thought hiking the Appalachian trails would shake off my creative slump. After years of city buzz, I needed solitude. It felt normal at first, just me and the trees. I wanted to capture beauty with my camera. But I can't stop thinking about what happened next. That first night I set up my tent as the sun began to set. I glanced towards the tree line and saw something move. My heart started racing. I thought I was just tired. I needed to focus, so I grabbed my camera and went to capture the sunset. The sky turned a stunning orange and red. It felt peaceful, but a chill crept in as darkness fell. Later, sitting by my campfire, I heard laughter. It felt wrong. There was nobody around. I wondered if my mind was playing tricks on me. I stared into the flames, wishing I would just calm down. The woods were too quiet. In the morning, I hiked further along the trail. The air was crisp and fresh. I stumbled upon something half buried in the dirt. It was an old photograph. The faces were smudged, but I could tell they were happy hikers, smiling from another time. A chill ran down my spine. I looked around searching for answers but found none, just trees and shadows. As I hiked, I noticed strange symbols carved into the bark. I didn't recognize them. Curiosity forced me to reach out and touch one. That's when I heard the laughter again echoing around me. I froze. It felt like someone was watching me. I turned quickly, expecting to see someone, but it was just me and the trees, standing tall, holding their secrets. That night I struggled to sleep. I kept seeing those figures again at the edge of my campsite. It felt like they were lingering just out of sight. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, just my imagination. But then I heard footsteps, soft and deliberate. I sat up, my body tense. I glanced at the tree line, and there was a man standing there just staring at me. My heart raced. "Are you okay?" I whispered. He didn't answer. I didn't even know if he could hear me. Then he asked, "Why are you here?" I turned to reply, but the spot next to me was empty. He vanished. I felt the weight of countless eyes upon me, and the woods fell silent. I didn't know what to think. Was he real? The next day I hiked faster, desperate to shake the fear. But everywhere I looked, those carvings haunted me. The laugh echoed in my mind. I hurried back to camp, praying I would feel safe in my tent. That night I barely slept again. Each sound felt amplified. I stared into the darkness, waiting for anything to happen. But nothing did. Just silence. Just me, alone with whatever was out there. Now I sit here a week later sharing this. The figures in the trees, the laughter, those strange symbols, they never left my mind. I don't know what I saw or heard, but I can't shake the feeling that something was waiting in those woods. And maybe it still is. The next day I felt I had to confront this creeping unease. I needed to understand what was happening around me. I packed my gear, ready to push deeper into the forest. Maybe answers lay ahead, or perhaps I'd find a way to shake the feeling of being watched. As I hiked, the trail became more overgrown. Branches brushed against my arms, reminding me I was intruding. Each step felt heavier. I couldn't shake the sensation that I wasn't alone. Shadows danced just outside my peripheral vision. I quickened my pace, hoping that reaching the next clearing would help. When I emerged into a small glade, I caught my breath. It was eerily quiet, but something caught my eye. A large boulder stood at the center, and on it were more of those odd symbols. This time, etched deep into the stone. They twisted and twirled, creating a mosaic that seemed alive. My heart raced as I approached. I pulled my camera from my backpack and began taking pictures. Then, I noticed something on the far side of the rock. Another photograph, dulled with age, lay in a crack. I reached for it, my fingers barely brushing the surface when that laugh echoed again, a fleeting whisper on the breeze. I jumped back, my pulse pounding in my ears. I glanced around, half expecting to see someone. Just trees, just shadows. But the laughter swirled in my mind, tight and panicked. "This isn't real," I muttered under my breath. Enough was enough. I turned away from the symbols, ready to head back when a movement caught my eye. At the edge of the glade there was a figure, a woman, her hair long and wild, stood with her back to me. She wore a tattered white dress, blending with the sun-dappled light. It felt wrong for someone to be so deep in the woods, but my curiosity pulled me closer. "What are you doing out here?" I called, my voice trembling. She didn't respond. The woods felt too still. I took a cautious step forward, but instead of turning, she began to walk deeper into the trees. "Hey," I shouted, heart racing. I followed her, desperate for answers. "Wait." But the more I clambered through the underbrush, the more she seemed to fade, as if the forest itself swallowed her up. Just then I stumbled over the roots, falling hard. As I pulled myself up, I noticed something on the ground, shiny and out of place. A small, silver locket. I picked it up, heart pounding, and opened it. Inside was another faded photo, the same faces from the old picture I'd found days before. I couldn't breathe. Who were these people? What were they doing here? As I stared into their smiles, my senses sharpened, and that laugh echoed in my head again, clearer this time. I felt something shift behind me. Spinning around, dread consumed me. The trees stood tall and silent, but I could feel eyes. I was not alone. Suddenly the sunlight dimmed as thick clouds rolled in. Everything felt wrong. The air became heavy with anticipation. And then, as if to confirm my fears, the laughter returned. Closer, louder, and far more sinister. Now I needed to find a way out of the forest before whatever was lurking found me first. I took a deep breath, forcing my legs to move. I couldn't stay here. That laughter circled my thoughts like a predator. My eyes darted between the trees, searching for the woman, for any sign of movement. The locket dangled from my fingers, cold and heavy. I turned and ran toward the path I had come from. The branches clawed at me as I pushed through, the sounds of the forest closing in. The trees felt alive, waiting, watching. Each crunch beneath my boots sounded exaggerated, echoing in the stillness. I was painfully aware that something was different now. That's when the laughter rose again, a discordant melody trying to lead me off track. I stumbled to a halt. My mind whirled, trying to make sense of it all. Was this some sort of game the forest was playing? Refusing to give in to fear, I rallied my thoughts. I remembered the photo, the locket. If this was all connected, then maybe I could find out more about her, about them. A strength I didn't know I had surged within me. I needed to get back to that boulder. After a few heavy breaths, I forced my heart to steady. I turned back into the glade where the symbols pulsed with an energy of their own. They felt even more ominous now. I scanned the area for any signs of the woman. Nothing but the whisper of the wind. I approached the boulder again, hoping to see something I missed before. As I inspected the symbols closely, I felt a prickling at the back of my neck. I turned slowly. There she was, standing just outside the perimeter of the glade. "Who are you?" I shouted. "What do you want?" This time she twirled around, her wild hair streaming like a dark river. She wore a look of sorrow, and for a brief moment, she almost seemed real. My heart ached. It was as if the forest itself held its breath. Before I could step closer, she vanished. The way she melted into the air felt unnatural, like watching smoke dissipate. Panic rose in my chest. Then I noticed something shift on the boulder. One of the symbols appeared to glow now, pulsing with a rhythmic light. I leaned closer, entranced. It was drawing me in. That laughter returned, but this time it was softer, more melodic. I felt compelled to touch it. No. I shook my head, fighting against the pull. There was power in this place, and I didn't want to know what would happen if I touched it. I stepped back, but the symbol continued to glow brighter. Then everything went dark. The light faded, swallowed whole by a sudden pitch blackness. I stumbled backward and fell against the boulder, panic clawing at my throat. I felt cold, like a chill had settled over me. "Get out!" I shouted into the darkness. But my voice echoed back, swallowed by the void that surrounded me. My heart raced as I scrambled to my feet, desperate to escape. With a final surge of adrenaline, I dashed toward the trees, hoping for an opening. Something whispered my name in the dark. My breath quickened. I had to focus, had to run. I needed to find my way out before the shadows truly swallowed me whole. My breath came in quick bursts as I stumbled deeper into the blackness. I could barely see a foot in front of me, but I felt the branches snagging at my clothes, the underbrush tugging at my ankles. Panic twisted in my gut. I was lost in a place I didn't understand. I forced myself to concentrate. There was stillness behind me, but something lingered in the air. Not the wind or the rustle of leaves, but something heavier. Like the forest was watching, waiting for me to make a mistake. And then it struck me. What if I wasn't the only one in the dark? The thought prickled at my skin. I had to get back to the boulder. There had to be answers there. I turned in what I hoped was the right direction, my fingers brushing against the bark of trees as I moved. I could still feel that pull of the glowing symbol in my mind, the echo of that laughter. Suddenly, the ground beneath me shifted. I slipped, landing hard on the forest floor. I gasped as a jolt of pain shot through my ankle. My heart raced and a knot of fear coiled tighter in my chest. I struggled to get back up. That's when I saw it. A faint light flickering in the distance, wavering like a flame. Cautiously, I made my way toward it, every instinct urging me to turn back. But curiosity pulled me in. What if it was a way out, or help? As I approached, the light shifted and dimmed. I peeked around a massive trunk and my heart stopped. There, off the trail, stood the woman again, swathed in that eerie glow. She seemed to be beckoning me. I could see grief etched on her face. "Help me!" I called, my voice breaking. She shifted, and for a moment I thought she might respond. Then, just like before, she dissipated into the darkness. My stomach dropped. Now what? I glanced around. The trees felt forbidding, a cage closing in. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had crossed a line. The laughter returned, closer now, echoing through the forest. In a desperate bid for clarity, I fumbled for the locket still clutched in my hand. My fingers slid over the intricate design, tracing the image of the woman I saw in the picture. "Who are you?" I whispered. Just then, a massive shadow darted past me, and I froze. My heart hammered, and I strained to see through the darkness. There was something out there, something fast and alive. I wasn't alone. My instincts kicked in. I needed to get moving. I took off in the opposite direction of the shadow, adrenaline fueling my steps. But the shadows danced around me, whispering louder, drowning out my thoughts. With the taste of fear sharp on my tongue, I pressed on, desperate for escape. Then I stumbled upon a clearing. The silvery light of the moon broke through the canopy, illuminating the ground. In the center stood an ancient stone, more prominent than the last one, etched with the same symbols. But this time, they glimmered as if alive. I could feel the energy buzz, calling to something deep inside me. Before I had time to think, I took a step toward it, but then everything trembled, and the earth shook beneath my feet. I froze as the stone cracked, and a low rumble filled the air. I sensed the weight of the forest pressing in, the laughter growing louder, morphing into something sinister. I had to make a choice. Step back and retreat to the unknown, or face whatever dark truth lay ahead. The glow from the stone pulsed again, beckoning me forward. And in that moment I knew I had to find out what was really happening here. The moment I stepped closer to the stone, a surge of energy shot through me. I felt it tugging at my insides, pulling me to the center. Confusion battled with fear, but some instinct deep within urged me to stay. What was this thing calling me? The crack in the stone widened, and I noticed a faint blue light leaking through. It was both beautiful and terrifying. I glanced back, half expecting something to jump out from the trees. But the only thing I saw was darkness closing in, hungry and waiting. "Stay calm," I whispered to myself. But my heart raced louder than my thoughts. I couldn't shake the feeling that the forest was alive. "Just look at it," I said, trying to ground myself. I took another step, feeling the soft earth beneath my feet pulse in rhythm with the stone, A sudden gust of wind whipped through the clearing, knocking leaves from the branches above. They spun around me like tiny tornadoes. The laughter returned, sharp and clear, now echoing around the stone. It sounded almost like a warning. Then, out of nowhere, the laughter stopped. The silence pressed down like a heavy blanket. The stone, still glowing, seemed to demand my attention. Compelled, I reached out to touch it. Before my fingers could make contact, a piercing cry shattered the stillness. My instincts screamed at me to run, but my body was frozen in place. "Help!" The voice was desperate, echoing through the trees. It was a sound that didn't seem human, filled with pain and urgency. "Where are you?" I shouted, my voice shaking. I glanced around but saw nothing. The fear I felt morphed into a need to help whoever was in trouble. But as I turned back to the stone, the earth quaked again, and it felt like the very ground was alive, pulsating with a heartbeat. I took a step back, and my foot slipped on the wet ground. I barely caught myself as my mind raced. What was happening? Who was calling for help? The shadows around me darkened, closing in, and I felt a cold presence brushing my skin. Then I noticed a small figure near the edge of the clearing. A boy, no older than 10. His eyes were wide with terror, and he was trembling. "Please, you have to help me, they're coming!" I blinked in disbelief. "Who's coming?" I stammered, taking a cautious step toward him. But just as I reached out, he pointed back toward the trees. "They'll find you too," he warned, his voice trembling. "You have to go." I looked back at the stone, its glow pulsing erratically. Another crash of thunder rolled overhead, its anger resonating through the forest, and shadows began to swirl just beyond the trees. "Please," he pleaded again. "Run before it's too late." In that moment, everything crashed down around me. I had two choices: flee into the night, or confront whatever darkness was lurking in the woods. But whatever I did, I knew one thing for certain: the way home was no longer clear. My heart pounded in my chest as I stared at the boy, torn between the urge to flee and the impulse to rush to his side. The shadows shifted restlessly, flickering like firelight at the edges of my vision. Whatever haunted this forest felt closer now. "Please," he shouted again, his voice breaking. "You don't want to be here when they come." "Who are they?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. The spectral figure of the boy seemed surreal next to the chaotic glow of the stone. "Spirits," he said, his eyes darting back toward the trees, wide with fear. "They've been looking for me. They want to take me away." "Take you where?" I pressed. My feet felt rooted to the spot, clinging like a child to their parent. He looked back, and his expression hardened. "They're here." He yanked at my sleeve. "We have to go, now." Before I could protest, he pulled me to the edge of the clearing. My instincts told me to trust him, but every rational thought screamed at me to flee the woods entirely. Could I abandon him? But just then the trees rustled with an unnatural force, and a low growl echoed from the shadows. I froze, eyes widening. Suddenly, a figure burst from the brush, dark and twisted. I barely registered its shape, a mass of shadow and malice. The air grew thick and an icy chill took hold of me. The boy yanked me again, pulling me backward. "Run!" I didn't need any more convincing. I sprinted, following him as he led me deeper into the thicket. The branches snagged at my clothes, and I could hear whispers swirling in the wind, taunting and shrill. It felt as if the entire forest knew we were there, watching, waiting. "Not that way," the boy shouted, and without question I veered left. The shadows danced on the ground, chasing us with a hunger that felt palpable. We stumbled past the stone, the blue light flashing behind me like a beacon. Yet it felt like a trap. "Where is a safe place?" I gasped, struggling to keep up. He didn't answer. Instead, he kept his focus ahead, as if he could sense where danger hovered. We crossed a small stream, the water cool against my overheated skin, but I could still hear the relentless sounds of pursuit behind us. The boy glanced back, fear rippling across his features. "We can't stop." A faint light up ahead caught my interest, flickering like a distant star. It promised hope. We barreled toward it, the branches clawing at my face and arms. What if it led us to more danger? I had to trust the boy. As we neared the light, I stumbled and collapsed onto the ground, gasping for breath. The boy turned, reaching out. "Get up, please." Suddenly, the reassuring glow I'd seen was extinguished. Darkness swallowed the path before us, and I felt a crushing weight settle over me. What just happened? That's when I saw it. A shadow moving in the darkness, creeping closer, its form taking shape. I felt a scream clawing its way up my throat. This was no ordinary darkness. It was alive. Someone was after us, and we had one chance to escape, or we would be lost in this haunting forest forever. The darkness pressed in, thick and suffocating, as I tried to rise to my feet. My heart raced, not just from the exertion but from the surge of panic that engulfed me. The shadows around us shifted, and I felt the cold breath of fear ripple down my spine. "Where do we go now?" I managed to whisper, looking desperately at the boy. "We have to find the old cabin," he said urgently. "It's not far, but we need to move." "Old cabin?" The words didn't offer any comfort. I had no idea what waited for us there, but I didn't want to stay here. I nodded, pushing myself up, and he led the way, weaving through the labyrinth of trees. We moved quickly, but I could hear something behind us, a whispering presence that swirled and moaned. I turned my head just long enough to catch a glimpse. Tall, thin shadows that stretched along the ground like fingers reaching out to grasp us. "There!" The boy pointed ahead, and I squinted through the darkness. A shadowy outline stood before us. A small cabin, half hidden behind dense foliage. I felt a sliver of hope mixed with dread. What if it wasn't safe? We sprinted toward it, the door hanging ajar as if it awaited us. The boy pushed through first, and I followed closely, glancing back to see if the spirits chased us. Heavy silence enveloped the cabin as we stepped over the threshold, but it was short-lived. The moment the door creaked closed, the air changed. A chill filled the space, and I could see my breath misting in front of me. The boy pressed his back against the door, listening intently, as if he could hear the shadows closing in on us outside. "Why did you lead us here?" I asked, trying to suppress the tremble in my voice. "The cabin is protected," he replied, though the uncertainty clung to his words. "At least for now." I glanced around the room. Dusty furniture lay silently beneath layers of aged fabric. My eyes fell on a small window framed by grimy panes. Outside, a glimpse of flickering shadows danced. "What do we do?" "They'll try to enter. We need to find something to block the door," he said, scanning the room with urgency. I joined him, shoving a heavy table toward the door while he grabbed an old trunk. A sudden crash from outside sent my heart racing again. They were closer. I could sense their hunger, their desire to break through and find us. Just as we finished barricading the door, I felt a tug at my mind. Something in the kitchen, the old cupboard, seemed to beckon me. "Wait!" I yelled, trying to push past the boy. "Something's there! Don't—" He grabbed my arm, but I shook him off. I couldn't ignore it. I had to know. I approached the cupboard, my pulse racing. I opened the door, and a chill ran through me as I found old trinkets strewn haphazardly inside. Then my fingers brushed against something smooth and cool, a small silver locket. Before I could pull it out, the door shuddered violently. The shadows outside surged, clawing at the wood. I had to make a decision: grab the locket or help the boy. Then everything went dark as the cabin shook, and a malevolent force crashed against the door. The shadows roared to life, and I couldn't tell if I was about to find help or unleash something far worse. I yanked the locket from the cupboard, its cold metal pressing against my palm like a warning. But before I could even inspect it, the whole cabin shook violently and my heart lurched. With desperation in my eyes, I turned back to the boy. "Help me!" he shouted, trying to brace the door against the onslaught. I rushed to his side, adrenaline pumping through my veins. The crashing sounds from outside grew louder, and I could feel the entire structure quaking beneath the spirit's weight. "Do you think it's safe here?" I shouted over the noise, pushing my shoulder against the heavy table. "What if it's not protected anymore?" The locket, he yelled back, his eyes wide. You have to hold it. I clutched the locket tighter, confused. What do you mean? What's it gonna do? There's something about it, just hold on to it. Before I could respond, the door was heaving inwards, splintering the wood. Fear spiraled within me, and I could see shadows breaking through the cracks. I could barely breathe as the room filled with a chilling, intoxicating darkness. That's when I saw it. A figure forming from the shadows, its long limbs reaching toward the dim light of the cabin. It was tall, hair-like tendrils billowing off its frame, and it moved with an eerie grace. My instincts screamed at me to run, but the boy stood frozen, eyes locked on the thing emerging before us. Back away, I yelled, pulling him toward the corner of the room. He didn't budge. He seemed entranced, drawn to the figure. Wait, it might help us. Don't be ridiculous. My voice trembled as I wrestled with the fear gnawing at my gut. It wants to hurt us. Suddenly the shadows shrieked, and the door buckled again, splintering further. I felt a surge of determination and raised the locket high like a shield. Get back, I screamed. In that instant, a flash of light erupted from the locket, illuminating the room, the shadows recoiling like a creature under sunlight. The tall figure hesitated, confusion rippling through its dark form. Keep it up, just hold it, the boy shouted, scrambling to help me. The room flickered between shadow and light as the power of the locket seemed to grow stronger. I felt a strange connection to it, a pulse that resonated with something deep inside me. The cabin quaked, but now it felt different, as if the walls were coming alive. Just when I thought we might actually push the shadows back, I noticed something strange. It was more than just shadows. There were faces hidden beneath their swirling forms, eyes glaring, mouths agape in silent screams. The boy gasped beside me, his voice trembling. They're trapped. They need to be freed. But at what cost? I whispered, catching a quick breath. The cabin trembled more violently. Before I could articulate another thought, the shadows lunged forward, swirling around us like a tempest. We were suddenly engulfed, the locket's light dimming against the weight of fear and despair. Then the darkness surged, and I couldn't tell if I was still in the cabin or if I had been pulled into another realm altogether. The boy reached for me, but his hand slipped through the void, and the last thing I heard was the echo of his terrified scream. I was alone, trapped in a world that felt all too familiar, and the locket, now powered off, hung limply at my side, a remnant of hope that felt more like a curse. I stumbled forward, darkness swirling around me like a thick fog. The cabin, with its splintering door and frantic shadows, was gone. I was utterly disoriented. The air felt heavier here, clinging to my skin like damp fabric. I reached out, searching for something solid, but only empty air met my fingertips. Hello? My voice barely broke through the stillness. No response came, just the echo of my fear. I felt lost. That's when I caught something out of the corner of my eye, a flicker of light in the distance. I squinted, heart racing, and took a step toward it. The light pulsed softly, beckoning me like a distant star. It felt oddly comforting, a reassurance in this unsettling place. As I moved closer, I noticed the ground beneath me. It was no longer the rough wooden floor of the cabin, but a twisted, shadowy path lined with dark trees that loomed over me. Their gnarled branches reached out like claws, scraping against each other as if whispering secrets. I shivered. The light flickered again, and with it came a faint whisper. Help us. I stopped in my tracks. Was I imagining things? No, it felt too real, too urgent. Who are you? I called out, my voice echoing back to me with no reply but the rustle of leaves. Just then, movement caught my attention. From behind the trees, figures emerged, dark silhouettes, their forms indistinct. They moved aimlessly, eyes downcast, as if trapped in a trance. I felt my pulse quicken. They were the souls from the shadows in the cabin. Please, help us. The whispers grew more frantic. We can't escape. Panic surged within me, and I suddenly remembered the locket. I fumbled for it, fingers brushing against its cool surface. It felt lifeless against my skin. It had dimmed, losing power just when I needed it most. I took a deep breath. "What do you need?" I asked, feeling foolish talking to shadows, but curiosity outweighed my fear. "Release us," they begged, their voices harmonizing like a haunting lullaby. "Find the heart of the woods. Free our light." "Where is it?" I shouted, frustration creeping into my voice. I was running out of time. I could feel the darkness closing in, pressing against me with a suffocating weight. "Follow the light," they chanted together, pointing their hollow hands toward the flickering glow ahead. Without thinking, I pressed forward, driven by the urgency of their cries and my need to escape this nightmare. The twisted path became more defined now, the shadows retreating slightly as I approached the light. I clutched the locket tighter, willing it to awaken. But the deeper I stepped into the woods, the more it felt like time itself was distorting. The trees twisted, their shadows elongating, whispering warnings with every rustle of the wind. I felt their anger, their pain, and it swirled around me. Each heartbeat echoed louder in my ears. Then I arrived at a clearing. What I saw took my breath away. A massive tree stood proudly in the center, its trunk pulsating with light, roots sprawling like veins into the earth. "Is this the heart?" I whispered, hesitating. The whispers grew louder, urging me closer. Just then, a gust of wind swept through the clearing, and the shadows lunged at me, pulling me back. I grasped the locket. "No!" And then, my vision blurred, darkness creeping in once more. The last thing I remembered was the tree's light flickering around me and the whispers turning into a chaotic cacophony. They grew desperate. "Don't leave us." Then, everything went dark. I awoke with a start, disoriented and gasping for breath. The ground beneath me was soft, covered in twigs and moss, and the air was fragrant with damp earth. I blinked against the dappled sunlight filtering through the leaves above. It felt like I had surfaced from a deep sleep, yet a cold dread settled in the pit of my stomach. Where was I? The chaos and the darkness were quickly fading, but their residual weight lingered. I pushed myself up and glanced around, heart racing. I seemed to be in a different spot within the same forest. Light was streaming in now, but the trees stood watch as stern guardians. I didn't recognize this area, and the laughter was gone, replaced by a haunting stillness. I pulled out the locket, still cold between my fingers. Something had changed. I could feel its energy pulsing softly in my grip now, much lighter than before. But it weighed heavy with questions. What path had I walked? What were the shadows? And what about the boy? Had he truly been there, or was he just a figment of a frayed mind desperate for connection? As I stood in that peaceful clearing, breath slowing, fragments of the boy's pleas echoed in my mind. "Find the heart of the woods. Free our light." I realized I might have stumbled upon that heart, the essence of the forest's memory. Yet what had I freed, if anything? Was it a release of the spirits trapped in its depths, or was it merely a dream, a cruel trick of my anxiety in this wilderness? I turned back, scanning for signs of the boy, or any lingering shadows. The air felt clearer, but anxiety knotted in my gut. I felt like a lone traveler emerging from an impossible journey, unsure of what lay ahead. The woods were alive, but the threats felt more distant now. With every step I took back to the path I had originally followed, clarity took hold. I was still unsettled by what transpired, its haunting quality lingering in the corners of my mind. Had I seen those trapped souls set free? Or had I merely awakened more questions? I pushed onward, heart heavier with each moment spent alone in this vast expanse of trees. Even as I navigated through the dense thicket, I couldn't suppress the feeling of being watched. Somewhere in the distance, a bird called out, breaking the eerie calm. After what felt like hours of uncertainty and self-doubt, I finally emerged onto the worn trail. Relief washed over me, but it came with a new layer of apprehension. Should I try to explain what happened? Would anyone believe me? I glanced back at the forest, the shadows dancing in the corners of my vision. The laughter felt like it could echo any time, reminding me that the woods held their secrets close. I took a deep breath, weighed down by the realization that some experiences couldn't be fully understood or explained. What haunted those woods, what had haunted me, remained just out of reach. I moved on, my spirit strained yet stirred. The trail ahead held the promise of life beyond the woods, but the mystery lingered as I stepped into the outside world. I could never shake the feeling that the darkness still roamed among the trees, waiting, patient. And even though I survived my experience, a part of me would always wonder, was I ever truly free? I never went back to those trails, but sometimes, in quiet moments, I can hear that laughter, faint, echoing through the branches, coaxing me back into the depths of the forest. And it leaves me with the question, what truly lies in the heart of the woods?